You're walking out the door, keys in hand, coffee still warm, when a strange feeling stops you. It's soft, but undeniable, like something or someone is trying to tell you, don't go. What if that feeling wasn't fear, but a message? What if that moment of hesitation, just a few seconds, was the reason you're still here? These are not just stories. They're sacred whispers from the unknown, real accounts of people who received angel signs before tragedy. A flicker in a dream, a voice with no sound, a sudden urge to change direction. And somehow they listened, just in time. In today's story, you'll hear about a Tuesday that should have been ordinary. It wasn't, because something invisible stepped in before the unthinkable could happen. A divine sign that changed everything. So the question is, was it coincidence? Or was it a guardian angel? Before the worst happens, sometimes the universe sends a sign. If you believe in guardian angels, fate, or simply want to hear real stories of life-changing moments, subscribe to Saved by a Sign and stay with us for today's powerful story. It was an ordinary morning, the kind where the light through the curtains is soft and golden, and the silence in the apartment feels almost sacred. I remember the air smelled like fresh rain, even though it hadn't rained. Everything felt still. Too still. I had one hand on the doorknob, the other fishing through my bag for my keys. That's when I saw it. An envelope. Plain white. No name, no stamp. Just resting there on the doormat like it had been placed by invisible hands. For a second, I thought it was a flyer or something a neighbor had dropped. But when I picked it up, I knew this wasn't a mistake. There was no logo, no branding. The paper was thick, textured, deliberate. It felt like something meant for me. I opened it slowly, expecting maybe a message from the landlord or some passive-aggressive neighbor note about parking. But inside, there was just one folded piece of paper and 5 words written in soft, almost delicate handwriting. Today, stay where you are. That was it. No name, no date, no threat, no reason. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at it. The hallway around me felt unnaturally quiet, like even the usual creaks of the building had paused. The air felt heavier, not in a dark way, but like something unseen was waiting to see what I'd do next. My first instinct was to laugh it off. Maybe it was a prank, a weird coincidence. But something in me tightened, a feeling deep in my chest, like when you suddenly remember something you forgot but can't place. That kind of pressure. I read the message again, and again. There was nothing menacing about it. In fact, it felt kind, like someone somewhere was trying to protect me, warn me, whisper, please, just don't go today. I closed the door without thinking. My heart was racing, but everything else in me felt calm, like I had made the right choice, even though I didn't understand why. Hours passed strangely. I tried to distract myself, cleaning, reading, answering emails, but I kept glancing out the window, as if something was supposed to happen, as if something had been waiting for me out there. At around 3:15 p.m. I heard sirens, a lot of them. They screamed down the street like sharp knives through the air. I looked out and saw people gathering near the bus stop, the one I always used, the one I would have been standing at that very moment. Later that day, I found out there'd been a serious accident. A car lost control and plowed through the bus shelter. There were injuries. People had been taken away. I don't know their names. I didn't want to look at the photos, but I couldn't stop thinking I would have been there. That was my bus. That was my routine. That was supposed to be my Tuesday. I picked up the envelope again that night. The message was still there, quiet and steady. Today, stay where you are. I tried to trace the handwriting with my finger, hoping it would unlock something. Who had written this? How did they know? And why me? There were no cameras in the hallway, no visitors that morning. I asked my neighbors. No one saw anything. No one heard a knock. It was as if the envelope had just appeared. I started replaying every detail of that morning, the silence, the scent of rain that hadn't fallen, the strange calm that settled over me when I chose to stay. And deep down, I began to wonder, was it really a coincidence? Or was someone watching over me? Not in a terrifying way, not like in movies where ghosts linger, but like someone good, someone who knew the shape of my day before I stepped into it, someone who wanted me to have another day. Was it a guardian angel? A message from the other side? A divine intervention cloaked in ink and paper? I don't know, and maybe I'll never know, but since that day I've paid more attention to the pauses, the whispers, the moments that feel off but safe. I've learned that not every warning shouts. Sometimes it comes as a whisper on white paper. Sometimes it arrives just in time, and sometimes it saves your life without ever asking for credit. I still have the envelope. It's tucked inside my journal, folded neatly like the day I found it. And every time I feel lost or unsure, I read those 5 words again. Not because I need direction, but because I need to remember. Someone saw something I couldn't, and they chose to reach out. I placed the note on the kitchen table, right beside my half-empty cup of coffee. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, but inside my mind everything was loud, racing thoughts, rational explanations. A war between logic and something else. Something I didn't yet have a name for. I kept staring at those 5 words. Today, stay where you are. They were so simple, but they held weight. Like they didn't belong to just any person, like they carried something sacred beneath the ink. Still, my mind pushed back. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone slipped it under the wrong door. Maybe it was just nothing. The logical part of me clung to those maybes. I'd always believed in order, plans, reasons, responsibility. I wasn't the kind of person who cancelled work because of a note on a doormat. I wasn't someone who believed in messages from the unknown, but there was something else inside me that morning. A still, small voice, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, gentle. You're meant to listen. That whisper didn't come from outside. It came from somewhere deep inside, a place that didn't speak often, but when it did, it never lied. I picked up my phone, still uncertain, and hovered over the screen. My thumb trembled slightly. I could feel the tug of doubt. What if I was being ridiculous? What if I was overreacting? I'd never missed a day of work without a clear reason. Not once. But my hands moved anyway, almost like they weren't mine. I typed out a simple message to my manager. I'm not feeling well today. I think I need to rest. The reply came quickly. Take care of yourself. Let me know if you need anything. No questions, no judgment, just kindness. When I put my phone down, the room felt different, quieter, but not in a hollow way, more like held, like I was exactly where I needed to be. I looked at the note again. Those 5 words hadn't changed, but somehow they now felt warmer, almost alive. And before I even realized what I was doing, I whispered, "Thank you." There was no one in the room to hear it. No reply, no breeze through the window, but the moment felt complete, like someone had heard. I didn't know who I was thanking, or what exactly, but something inside me did. And for the first time in a very long while, I stopped trying to explain everything and simply listened. The morning unfolded like silk, slow, soft, and strange. I moved through the apartment on autopilot. I made a cup of tea I didn't really want, turned on the television for background noise I didn't really hear. I kept glancing at the clock, as if time itself had shifted somehow, Too slow, too quiet, too careful. There was a moment, around 10:30, when I almost laughed at myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the note was just a random coincidence, some strange fluke. I'd always prided myself on being grounded, practical, and now here I was, letting 5 little words shape the course of an entire day. But something wouldn't let me leave. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like a gentle resistance, like walking into a room and instinctively stepping back without knowing why. A presence that didn't block my way, just asked me not to go. By noon, the stillness had grown louder than any noise. Even the birds, the ones that normally filled the trees outside my window, had gone silent. It was the kind of quiet that presses against your ears, like the world is holding its breath. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtains slowly. The street below looked the same. Sidewalks, parked cars, the familiar crack in the pavement near the stop sign. But it felt different, as if something was waiting. I stared at the road I usually walk down every weekday. My eyes traced the usual path, past the bakery, the small tree with its uneven branches, the bus stop at the corner. I should have been there by now, standing in line, checking my phone, running through my to-do list like any other day. But instead, I was here. And in that moment, I felt something unexplainable. A soft lightness in my chest. Not relief, not joy, but something quieter, like a weight I hadn't known I was carrying had suddenly lifted. The kind of feeling that makes you pause, not because you're afraid, but because you feel seen. I wasn't alone. I couldn't see it and I couldn't name it. But something, someone, was watching over me. Not in a way that frightened me, in a way that felt sacred. I stood there at the window longer than I should have, as if the air outside held an answer I wasn't meant to receive just yet. I didn't know the details. I didn't know what I'd been saved from, but something deep in my spirit whispered the truth. You were kept from the edge. Not because I deserved it, not because I asked, but because, somehow, something loving had stepped between me and a moment I would never have returned from. And I never even saw it coming. It happened at exactly 2:17 p.m. One moment, I was rinsing out a teacup in the sink. The next, a sound tore through the city like a roar from the heavens, a deep, thunderous boom that shook the walls of my apartment. The windows trembled in their frames. The mug slipped from my hand and shattered across the tile. I froze. Every part of me felt suspended, like my soul had jolted a second ahead of my body. Then came the alarms, one, then another, a chorus of car horns and sirens rising in panic just beyond the hill. I ran to the window, heart hammering like a drum, and that's when I saw it. A cloud of smoke curling up into the afternoon sky. Black, thick, alive, it billowed from somewhere near the street I knew too well. The same road I walked each day, the one that carried my routine like clockwork. The bus route, the 210, the one I always took. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I reached for the remote with trembling hands and turned on the news. The screen lit up with red banners and urgent voices. Breaking report. Words spilled out faster than my mind could hold them. Gas explosion. A cafe near the intersection, right beside the bus stop. Casualties, injuries, authorities on the scene. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew. That bus was my bus. That corner cafe, I'd passed it almost every day for years. I could see it in my mind without even closing my eyes. The green awning, the bell on the door, the smell of coffee and bread that always met me at the corner, and I would have been there, at that time, at that exact place. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, still gripping the remote like it might tether me to something solid. I couldn't stop shaking. My breath came in shallow pulls, the air around me suddenly too thick, too loud, too heavy. But through the chaos, one image rose clearly in my mind. The envelope, still sitting quietly on the table, 5 words, written by a hand I never saw. Today, stay where you are. A message, a warning, a whisper from something beyond the reach of this world. I didn't know what to call it, I still don't, but as the smoke climbed higher into the sky and the city mourned the lives forever changed, I realized mine had been spared by a thread, a breath, a sign, and the thought that followed hit deeper than any sound could. What if I hadn't listened? I pressed my hand to my heart, and for a long time, I just sat there, crying, yes, but not just out of fear, out of awe, out of disbelief, out of a sudden, overwhelming sense that something unseen had reached for me that day and held me back from the edge. I sat on the edge of my couch, barely breathing. The world outside had gone quiet again, but inside me, everything was echoing, memories, sounds, the shatter of a teacup, the roar of the explosion, the silence that came before it all. In my hands, the note felt impossibly fragile now, like it wasn't just paper anymore, but something sacred, something meant to be held with reverence. My fingers trembled as I read the words again, even though I had them memorized. Today, stay where you are. 5 words, softly written, but they thundered louder than anything I'd ever heard in my life. Tears blurred the ink as I stared at the note. They came slowly at first, then all at once, like something deep in my soul had finally caught up to what had happened. Or more truthfully, what hadn't happened. I should have been there, not maybe, not probably, absolutely. My routine was like clockwork. I always left at the same time, always caught that same bus, always walked past that cafe without a second thought. If I had followed that routine, if I hadn't listened to the whisper, the pull, the strange stillness of the day, I wouldn't be sitting here. And in that moment, every layer of logic fell away. All the doubts, all the excuses I'd tried to make for the note, all the little lies we tell ourselves when we're afraid to believe in something bigger. This wasn't random. This wasn't chance. It was a message, a divine interruption, a sacred detour I didn't ask for, but was blessed enough to receive. I held the note against my chest and closed my eyes. My whole body was shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of knowing I had been spared, not by luck, not by timing, but by grace. A single whisper escaped my lips, so soft I wasn't even sure I'd said it aloud. Who sent you? But in the quiet that followed, I realized I already knew. I didn't need wings or a vision to believe it. Somewhere in the space between the known and the unseen, someone had been watching. Not to frighten me, not to control me, but to save me, an angel. Or something just as divine. And for the rest of my life, I will carry those 5 words with me, not as a warning, but as proof that sometimes heaven reaches down quietly, not with thunder, but with paper and ink. That night, sleep never came. I lay in bed with the lights off, the apartment quiet, the city hushed under the weight of what had happened. But inside my mind, everything was loud. Thoughts crashing into each other, looping images I couldn't silence, the smoke, the sirens, the note. I stared at the ceiling, counting shadows. My hand still tingled as if holding the envelope again. I kept replaying the moment I almost walked out the door, the moment I didn't. And then, just past midnight, something shifted. The air in the room changed, not colder, not warmer, but fuller somehow, thicker, like the space around me was no longer empty. I felt a gentle weight on my shoulder, not heavy, not alarming, just present. A calm settled over me, soft and slow. And though there was no sound, no voice in the way we usually understand voices, something spoke from somewhere beyond words, beyond thought, from the quiet center of my chest. You were heard. You are loved. Your path is not yet finished. The message wasn't spoken aloud, but it bloomed inside me, real and complete. I didn't imagine it. I didn't invent it to comfort myself. It was given, like a truth placed gently in the middle of my fear. Tears came instantly, flowing down the sides of my face and into the pillow. But they weren't tears of panic, not even grief. They were tears of recognition, of knowing I'd been seen by something I couldn't see and held by something I couldn't touch. The feeling wrapped around me like a blanket of light, not dramatic, not dazzling, just pure. A quiet protection, as if the veil between here and there had thinned just enough to let a blessing through. I stayed still, afraid that moving might chase it away, but it didn't leave. For the first time since the explosion, since the sound that shook everything I thought I knew, I felt completely safe, not because the world had changed, but because I had. Somehow, something had reached for me through the silence, not just to protect my body, but to comfort my soul. I closed my eyes, whispering, "Thank you," again and again into the dark. And this time, I knew someone was listening. In the days that followed, I became someone else, still me on the outside, but moving through the world with new eyes. I needed answers. I needed something solid to hold on to, something that would make sense of what had happened. So I searched. I asked my neighbors, door to door, quiet and careful. Had anyone seen someone near my apartment that morning? A delivery? A stranger? Anything? They all said the same thing. No, nothing unusual. I spoke to the building manager, hoping the security cameras might offer a clue. He pulled the footage from that morning. We sat side by side in front of the screen, watching the hallway outside my door. Empty. The timestamp clicked past the moment I had found the envelope. No one came, no one left. Just stillness. It made no sense, no shadow, no figure, no motion at all. It was as if the envelope had been placed by nothing and everything all at once. When I told a few friends, they smiled kindly, the way people do when they think you're fragile. You were probably just emotional. Maybe you dreamed the note. Your mind filled in the blanks. But they hadn't seen the handwriting. They hadn't felt the air shift in the room. They hadn't heard the silence speak. I didn't try to convince them, because deep inside, I knew the truth. That note was written by a hand I may never see, but one that sees me, fully, softly, constantly. And that realization changed everything. I started praying again, not because I was afraid, but because I was grateful. Not just grateful to be alive, but grateful to be known by something bigger than all of this. The world, once ordinary, became full of quiet language. I noticed little things, repeating numbers on receipts and clocks, the feeling of warmth in places that should have been cold, moments of peace that came for no reason, while standing in line, brushing my teeth, walking under grey skies. It wasn't about superstition. It wasn't about trying to find magic in everything. It was about recognizing that something sacred had brushed against my life and left fingerprints behind. I didn't find proof in footage. I didn't find logic in evidence. But I found faith, because I had walked through a miracle. Not a loud, dramatic one with flashing lights, but a quiet miracle. The kind that slips into your life like morning light through curtains, soft, unnoticed by most, but completely undeniable once it touches your skin. And now, when I look back, I don't feel fear. I don't even feel confusion. I feel awe, because on that day, something beyond this world reached for me. And I listened, and my heart will never be the same. Weeks passed, and life moved forward in the way it always does, slowly, quietly, without asking if you're ready. The city returned to its rhythm. Buses ran, doors opened and closed, people walked past each other without ever knowing what almost happened to the stranger beside them. But the moment never left me. It lived in the corners of my mind, soft and steady, a silent echo of that day, and the message that saved it. I took the note, now worn at the edges, its paper softened by my hands, and placed it in a simple frame, no gold trim, no decoration, just clear glass like a window into something I still don't fully understand. I hung it on my wall, right by the door, and every time I pass it, I feel a quiet reminder. Someone saw you that day. Someone cared enough to interfere, not to control, not to frighten, but to guide. Now, I move through the world differently. I live slower. I listen deeper. I pay attention to the whispers, the little nudges that come from nowhere, the soft hesitation. Before a decision, the way something inside says wait, even when everything outside says go. And when I listen, peace follows. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just arriving 5 minutes late and missing traffic, or calling someone at the exact moment they needed to hear a kind voice, or walking a different way home and noticing a moment of beauty I would have missed. But every time I follow that feeling, I remember. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, about honoring that quiet pull from something higher, something I can't see but have come to trust more than ever. That day changed me. It taught me that divine love doesn't always come with thunder or miracles. Sometimes it comes with a piece of paper, a sentence, a whisper in the stillness, and all it asks in return is that we listen. I still don't know why I was spared. The days continue, one after the next, as if nothing changed. But I have. The world looks the same on the surface, the same streets, the same sky, the same morning light that slips between my curtains. But something inside me no longer walks through life the way it once did. Something now listens before stepping forward. Maybe my time simply hadn't come. Maybe there's something I'm still meant to do. Maybe it was mercy or love or both. What I do know, what I now carry like a quiet truth folded in my pocket, is this. When something stops you, soft but sure. When you feel that sudden stillness in your chest. When an envelope appears where it shouldn't, it matters. Even if no one else sees it, even if you never get an explanation, even if the world calls it coincidence. I believe it was more, not because I need to believe, but because I was there. And when the world shook, I wasn't standing where I was supposed to be. I had been pulled back, gently, quietly, divinely. We imagine angels with wings and fire, but maybe they come in simpler ways. Maybe they speak through small things, a delayed train, a voice in a dream, a stranger's touch, a note on a doormat. Maybe the divine doesn't always need a miracle, just your attention. That note, those 5 words, weren't loud. They weren't written in gold or thunder, but they saved me. And now, I live differently. I pause when something feels off. I take the longer route without knowing why. I say no when a yes feels wrong in my chest. And I've learned to be still enough to hear the things that don't speak out loud. There's a presence that lingers in the silence now. A sense that I'm never walking alone. And when doubt returns, as it always does, I look at the framed note on my wall. It doesn't give me answers. It gives me remembrance that something unseen once reached for me, not with fear, but with love. If you're here, reading, watching, listening, maybe you've felt it too, that pull, that pause, that feeling that something beyond the noise is asking you to notice. So let me ask you, have you ever experienced a sign like this? Do you think it was just coincidence or something divine? What would you have done if it had happened to you? Do you believe angels try to guide us, even when we don't notice? I don't claim to have the answers. That's not why I'm here. But I believe these stories matter, because they remind us that we're not alone, that something larger is always moving, quietly, kindly, mysteriously, through our lives. And sometimes it only takes 5 words to change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't let these signs go unnoticed. Subscribe to Saved by a Sign and stay with us to hear more real stories of faith, mystery, and the moments when life whispers, just in time. Thank you for staying until the end. But remember, there are stories that aren't just meant to be heard. They're meant to be felt. We'll see you in the next one, if you're still listening.